Hi Susie. I am currently in my hotel room for World Skills, so like if the decor and the audio is weird, that's why. And I'm sorry. I can't really do anything about it, but I need to get stuff done. Anyway, here's my picks for needle drops to talk about in Minor Mason's radio show. Non-radio show, podcast. Degree from the movie. Let's get started. I'm going to start with The World's End by Edgar Wright. Great film. And specifically its usage of the song Loaded by Primal Scream. Because in the beginning of the film, the opening very clearly sets up that Gary King is obsessed with his teenage years from the early 90s and desperately wants to go back to where he was. And that's when the needle drop of Loaded by Primal Scream represents his internal monologue, his thoughts. It represents the way he's feeling in the opening scene of him in this like meeting. Specifically, it opens up with we slowly zoom in on his face as we hear specifically the song opens up on an audio sample from Wild Angel. And as the movie slowly zooms in on Gary's face, he hits a grin as he has his epiphany, and then the music kicks in. This is just an example for just a good needle drop, because the song sets off the story of the movie, and it just explains the character's thoughts and feelings in the moment perfectly, which is why I personally would like to use Edgar Wright's The World's End, specifically the needle drop of Loaded by Primal Scream, in the podcast. But to talk about the next one, I need to kind of explain the difference between objective and subjective filmmaking. Neither is better than the other, but basically the difference is objective is when you're just kind of watching stuff happen, you're just an observer of the movie, where subjective filmmaking is when you follow a specific character. So the movie is written from a character's perspective. For example, my final major project last year was written from Imris's perspective, and there's no one better at subjective filmmaking than Martin Scorsese. For example, Goodfellas. Goodfellas follows Henry Hill's point of view, and the music represents that really, really well. For example, he starts off the movie like eyes wide, like wide-eyed, that's the word, wide-eyed, like excited about this whole world, and then the music represents that by playing upbeat, happy pop music. For example, The Crystals, Then He Kissed Me. But as it gets more into the mafia side of things, it starts switching out the pop music for rock music, for example, the Rolling Stones. And by the time that he's coked out of his mind and being chased by the police, and by the time he's coked out of his mind and being chased by the police, the music is completely taken over by psychedelic rock. Scorsese actually specifically mentioned that he only chooses these needle drops based on if the song has something to comment about the scene, which goes hand in hand with his usage of the outro of Layla in the his usage of the outro of the song, which goes hand in hand with his usage of the outro of the song Layla. In the actual song, this outro plays after a really intense piece of rock music, which fits the scene really well because it's literally just after, like, it's the end of the golden era for the characters in Goodfellas. In general, I just think you can't make a video about needle drops without mentioning Scorsese at some point, and I think Goodfellas is his biggest example, especially because the individual songs themselves aren't really that big of a deal. It's all of them together. But back to Edgar Wright, specifically Baby Driver. The reason for Baby Driver is because it takes the jukebox system of Needle Drops and basically turns into an entire movie. The jukebox system is very simple. A character puts on a piece of music and the entire soundtrack is diegetic sound. In the case of Baby Driver, it's what Baby is listening to. And we are listening to the movie soundtrack through his ears, making the entire soundtrack diegetic. Also, random side fact, in Baby Driver, whenever there's no music playing, you hear ringing because Baby has tinnitus. Specifically, I want to highlight 3 songs, which are B-A-B-Y. The reason for that song is because it's literally points out, because it shows how Baby listens to the music in his outside world around him and then uses it to express himself later on when he does. He hears someone sing a song, he goes and checks it out, and then he expresses himself through that song, even if he doesn't know it yet. Specifically, he expresses his crush on Deborah. Also, the usage of the song Easy. The reason for that is because he's easing out of the crime business, as far as he knows. Specifically, he's easing out of this business that he was in, again, as far as he's concerned, and the music represents that, because even though he's easing out and it is easy for him to make that decision, he clearly is a bit worried about what could happen, and it's easy for him to make the decision to move on because now he has this whole world ahead of him, because he has the entire week ahead of him, because it's easy like a Sunday morning. And last but not least, for a significantly less storytelling reason, is Never Ever Gonna Quit. The reason for that is because it very simply is the usage of using a song's needle drop for its lyrics. Specifically the I'm never never gonna quit, quitting this ain't my shtick. One of the two. And the reason for that is because the character of Buddy, now singing along with the song to threaten Baby. They turned a romance song into a threatening song, just based on the context of the movie, and it fits. It's executed really well. They make this romance song significantly more threatening and make Buddy more threatening because he can turn this romance song into a threat. Anyway, those are my picks for the needle drops. I know I said 4 to Mason, but I technically had a lot more. But I picked 3 movies at least, so I don't know if I'm cheating or not. I don't really care. Anyway, I'm gonna continue working on focusing on what skills now. Bye bye.